The groom dropped my boyfriend's sister's hand at the altar and started walking toward me instead. 300 guests turned to stare as this perfect, expensive man in a custom tux bowed his head in front of the poor girl in the simple black dress and called me ma'am. A few minutes earlier, his bride and her family had been laughing at me, whispering that I looked cheap and out of place, like I'd snuck into their world by accident. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged like that? Right to your face by people who had no idea they were living off money that came from you. My name is Zollivance, but people who know me just call me Zola. And this is the story of how a coffee shop, a wedding, and one word, ma'am, exposed everything a very rich family tried so hard to hide. Before I rewind and show you how we got to that altar, if you're into real-life stories where the masks slip and you see who people really are underneath the fancy clothes and fake smiles, go ahead and hit like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. I do read the comments, you know what I mean, and some of your stories are honestly wilder than mine. Now forget the ballroom for a minute. Picture this instead, a small coffee shop with worn wooden floors, a door that sticks in the summer, and a bell that rings a little too loudly every time someone walks in. The air smells like roasted beans and old paper. There's a faded burgundy armchair in the back that sags just right when you sit down, like it's been waiting for you all day. That was my sanctuary. In that chair with a book open on my lap and a mug of black coffee warming my hands. I wasn't important. I wasn't Vance Capital. I wasn't the faceless investor people wrote desperate emails to at 3 in the morning. I was just a woman in a gray sweater, hair pulled back, trying to disappear into printed pages for a few hours. Across from me, taking up way too much space in that tiny, cozy world, sat Kaylin Sterling. Colleen was the kind of man who looked wrong in a place like that, but in the best way. Dark suit that fit him a little too perfectly. Watch that could probably pay someone's rent for a year. Shoes that had never seen a sidewalk crack in their life. He was born into boardrooms and charity galas and vacation homes with names. Old money. Sterling money. And yet, every time he walked through that door, something in him relaxed. It was like he shed a layer of invisible armor. His shoulders dropped. His voice softened. His eyes stopped scanning the room for threats or opportunities. He would loosen his tie slide into that mismatched armchair across from me and just be Kaylin. Not Mr. Sterling. Just a man who liked deep conversations and strong coffee. Our love didn't start with fireworks. It started with quiet, with long silences that weren't awkward, with conversations that wandered from art to philosophy, to the kind of life we actually wanted to live when no one was watching. I remember one afternoon so clearly. I was reading a book about architecture, and there was this line that made me stop. He says architecture is music frozen in time, I murmured without looking up. Colleen leaned in just a little, elbows resting on his knees, eyes only on me. So what does that make a life? He asked. A song played out. I finally looked up, smiled, and said, maybe. Some lives are loud symphonies, right, always demanding attention. And some lives are like a single perfect note in a quiet room, barely anyone hears it, but the people who do never forget it. He held my gaze for a long second and said quietly, I think you underestimate how loud your note is. I laughed it off, but that stuck with me. Then his phone vibrated. It was one of those sharp, jittery vibrations against the wooden table that instantly breaks the spell. He glanced down, and I saw the name flash on the screen before he turned it over. Leonora, spelled out in elegant letters, but I already knew who it was. His mother. His whole body changed in an instant. The easy, open expression faded, replaced with something guarded, careful. His shoulders tensed, his jaw shifted slightly, and when he answered, his voice dropped into this low, polite tone I had heard before. "Mother," he said. He turned a little in his chair like he was trying to give me privacy. But that coffee shop wasn't big enough to hide emotion. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough to stitch the rest together. "No, she's not in finance," he said. His eyes flicking toward me, then away again. "Her family. They're good people, Mother. That's what matters. No, it's not like that. Yes, she'll be there. I'm handling it." I pretended to go back to my book, but my brain had stopped reading. I sat there listening to the pauses, the sighs, that particular edge he only got when he was trying to make his mother happy and failing. You ever hear half a conversation and still know exactly what the other half sounds like? Yeah. That. When he finally ended the call, he didn't speak right away. He just stared at the table, breathing slowly like he was rehearsing something in his head. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out an envelope. It was heavy cream cardstock with a silver crest pressed into the flap. The kind of envelope that screams old money before you even open it. He set it down between us like a confession. "My sister Clarissa is getting married," he said, voice slightly strained. I didn't touch it yet. I just watched his face. He didn't look like a man excited to bring his girlfriend to a family celebration. He looked like someone about to ask me to walk through a minefield with him. To who? I asked, eventually more to break the tension than because I cared about the groom. "Marcus Thorne," he said. "Thorne Industries Tech Money. Good family on paper. My mother is thrilled." The way he said "my mother" told me everything. He took a breath. "Zola, my family. They're very traditional, very set in their ways. They have these standards, these expectations. It's not about you, I swear to you. It is not that I am ashamed of you. God, never that." He leaned in suddenly, desperate for me to believe him. "I'm afraid for you." That word hung there between us. "I'm afraid of what they'll say to you," he went on. "The way they talk, these little comments they think are harmless. These observations they throw around like they're nothing. They don't realize how sharp their words are. I couldn't bear to see them make you feel like you are less than what you are." In his mind, this was love, protection. And in a way it was. But in my mind, something else stirred. A tired, familiar kind of anger. Because here's the thing. I had already seen the world at its sharpest. Not in fancy ballrooms, but in acquisition meetings, investor conferences, private dinners, where men twice my age smiled at me like they were doing me a favor, just by sitting at my table. Then begged for my signature on a contract I could have written in my sleep. I knew what it was like to be seen as a walking checkbook, as someone's ticket to the next level. What his family could do was different, smaller, pettier, but no less cruel. I placed my hand over his, felt the tension running through him like an electric current. "Kaylin," I said softly, "I'm not made of glass." He exhaled a half laugh, half sob. "I know that's what scares me. You see too much. They don't like people who see too much." I glanced at the invitation. I knew what going meant. It meant stepping into his world, Billy, not just in that little coffee shop bubble. It meant letting his mother and sister look at me and decide on sight whether I was acceptable. "I'll go with you," I said. His shoulders dropped just a little, but the shadow didn't leave his eyes. The decision had been made, but the fear was still there. A few days before the wedding, the war started. Not in person. On my phone. I was at home in my tiny apartment with the uneven floorboards and the plants on the windowsill leaning toward the sun when a notification popped up. "Clarissa Sterling has sent you a friend request." I stood there for a moment, fingers hovering. Declining it would make a statement I didn't feel like making yet. So I accepted. Almost immediately, a new message appeared. "Hi Zola, Clarissa here. Kaylin's told me so much about you. I'm so excited to meet you at the wedding. I know our family events can be a little intense, so I wanted to send you a few dress ideas, just things my friends and I love. so you don't feel out of place or anything. Hope this helps. Under the message, a neat list of links. Chanel, Valentino, Oscar de la Renta. Each dress more outrageously priced than the last. On the surface, it sounded friendly. Helpful even. But if you've ever dealt with rich, mean girls, you know what was really being said. So you don't feel out of place. Translation: you are out of place. Here are the costumes you need to wear if you want to pass. And here's the wild part. I could have bought every single dress on that list with the money in one of my less healthy accounts. I saw a pair of shoes I recognized from a deal I'd funded. I could have sent her a screenshot of the wire transfer that paid for the boutique that sold those dresses. Instead, I felt something heavier than anger. Exhaustion. This was exactly the kind of subtle, polite weapon I had walked away from when I built my quiet life. I typed my reply slowly. Hi, Clarissa, thank you for your thoughtfulness. I have my own style, but I'll definitely keep your suggestions in mind. Looking forward to celebrating with you. Polite. Distance preserved. Line drawn. That evening, I showed the messages to Kalen. We were on my couch, our knees almost touching the glow from my cheap little lamp softening the lines of his face. He read the message once. His expression went flat. He read it again. His jaw tightened. She sent you this? He asked, voice low. Yeah. He stood up so fast he knocked into the coffee table. Unbelievable, he muttered, already scrolling to his sister's contact. He hit call, turned away, and started pacing my small living room. Clarissa, what was that message you sent Zola? He snapped as soon as she answered. Don't insult me by saying you were trying to help. Help with what? Did you think she doesn't know how to dress herself? It was condescending, and it was insulting. He paused, listening. I could hear a faint muffled protest through the speaker, something about family image and embarrassing us. Embarrass the family, he repeated, incredulous. Clarissa, right now the only person embarrassing this family is you. He hung up, hard thumb jabbing the screen. Then he dropped back down next to me, rubbing his face. I am so sorry, he said. My sister is shallow. There's no depth to her at all, so she judges everything by the surface. Please, please don't let her get into your head. He meant it as comfort. But that word, shallow, stuck. To him, her behavior was just a character flaw. Rude, immature. To me, it was part of a system. A whole language of exclusion that people like her spoke fluently often, without even realizing they were doing it, because it had always worked for them. That night, after he went home, I stood in front of my closet and opened the doors. On the front rail, my life now. Simple, well-made pieces in grays and blacks and deep blues. Dresses that moved well, that fit me instead of drowning me in fabric. At the very back, behind everything else, were a few garment bags. Ghosts. I unzipped one. The silk caught the light even in my dim bedroom, shimmering in a way that only very expensive things do. It was a couture gown from another lifetime, one that had been photographed for a magazine cover once. The young woman behind the myth, the headline had called me. I could have worn it to that wedding. I could have stepped out of the car, dripping in their favorite brands, wrapped in their armor, and watched their eyes widen. I could have played their game on their field and beaten them at it with one hand tied behind my back. For a moment I wanted to, just to see the look on Clarissa's face. Then I took a breath, looked at myself in the mirror, and realized what that would really mean. It would mean admitting that their approval mattered to me, that their rules had weight, that the only way to win was to play along. I zipped the bag shut, pushed it gently back into the shadows, and let my hand fall on a different dress. A simple ink black sheath. No logo, no rhinestones. Just clean lines, perfect tailoring fabric that respected the body wearing it. That was my choice. I will not hide who I am. But I will not perform for you either. If it were you standing in front of that closet, which dress would you have chosen? The day of the wedding, the Grand Sterling Hotel looked less like a building and more like a flex. The facade was glass and stone, and gold details, all screaming one loud message: money lives here. Inside the lobby, everything gleamed. Marble floors, massive flower arrangements that probably cost more than a month of someone's salary servers gliding around with champagne already poured. Somewhere, a string quartet played something soft and expensive. As soon as we walked in, I felt it. A shift in the air. The way conversations dipped just enough for people to glance over. The slow slide of eyes taking me in, from my simple black dress, to my dark skin, to the hand I had laced with cowlins. People weren't curious. They were assessing, adding me up, deciding where to place me in their silent social rankings. Kalen squeezed my fingers. "I'm right here," he murmured. We hadn't made it far into the crowd when two people peeled away from a group and floated toward us. One was Clarissa in her wedding dress. The other was his mother. Eleanora Sterling looked like a sculpture of ice that someone had set diamonds into. Everything about her was controlled, from her hair to her posture to the exact tilt of her chin. When her eyes swept over me, the disassemble was so fast, it was almost surgical. "Kalen, darling, you're late," she said, smiling at him in a way that had no room for anyone else. "Mother," he replied. "You remember Zola." Her gaze flicked back to me. "Of course," she said. Two clipped words. No warmth. No welcome. Clarissa stepped forward next. Veil floating bouquet, perfectly arranged smile, practiced for photographers. "Oh, Kalen, you finally brought your friend," she said, stressing that word just enough. Her eyes moved down my dress and back up, taking their time. "Zola, that dress, is so minimalist. Very brave. There are compliments, and then there are insults dressed up in expensive perfume." That was the second kind. Before I could answer, another voice joined the scene. An older woman with a bird-like face, powdered skin, eyes that had seen a lot and softened for none of it. She leaned toward Clarissa in a stage whisper. Her skin is quite dark, isn't it?" "Very different," she said. Clarissa smiled wider, patting the woman's arm. "Oh, you know, Aunt Beatrice, it's all about those exotic looks these days. So uniquely beautiful. Different. Exotic, uniquely beautiful. All those words sound nice on paper. But when they're said about you while you're standing in a room where you are the only one who looks like you hear the real message. You are other. You are outside. We are letting you in as a novelty." Heat rose in my chest. That familiar mix of anger and shame and defiance. Beside me, I felt Kalen's body go rigid. He dropped my hand fists, clenching at his sides. "That's enough," he started, voice low and shaking. I reached out and touched his arm. Just a gentle pressure. He looked at me confused, but I kept my eyes on Clarissa and her aunt. I smiled. Small. Steady. "Thank you for the compliment," I said, looking directly at them. "I've always taken great pride in my heritage." Silence. Just long enough to be uncomfortable. The confidence in their eyes flickered. They weren't expecting me to stand there unbothered, refusing to play the embarrassed outsider. They had thrown their sharp little stones, and I hadn't even flinched. They drifted away, disappearing into the glittering crowd. On the surface, I had won that exchange. Inside, I felt very, very alone, because it's one thing to clap back at a comment. It's another to stand in a room where the walls and the money and the bloodlines all quietly agree you don't belong. Do you think that's fair? That people can smile in your face like that? Insult you in code, and then later call it a misunderstanding. When it was time for the ceremony, an usher led us. Not to the front rows with the family, but farther back to a section full of business partners and important friends. The seats were plush. The view was perfect. The message was clear. You are close, but not one of us. Oddly, I felt calm. From that distance, it was easier to detach, to look at the white aisle, the floral arch, the sea of designer dresses, and see not a love story, but a negotiation. Two powerful families signing a contract with rings and champagne instead of pens. Then the groom walked in. Marcus Thorne looked every inch the rich, handsome tech success story. Black tux, neat hair, jaw set just right. But his eyes were wrong. He kept glancing at his watch, shifting his weight. He looked less like a man about to marry the love of his life, and more like someone waiting for a bomb to go off. The music shifted. The huge doors swung open. Clarissa appeared, all lace and smugness, gliding down the aisle like she owned the air itself. Everyone turned to look at her. Everyone. Except the groom. His eyes drifted over the crowd, instead scanning faces. Searching, and then his gaze hit mine. It was like watching a computer overload in real time. His brows pulled together. His mouth parted slightly. His eyes narrowed as if he was trying to bring something into focus. He stared. I had never seen this man before in my life. At first, I thought it was a simple, awkward moment. Two strangers accidentally locking eyes. I gave him a tiny, polite nod. The kind of neutral hi you give someone you don't really know. He didn't nod back. He didn't look away. The confusion in his face was turning into something else now. Shock. Recognition. The officiant started speaking, his voice rolling through the room in practiced tones. Words about love and unity and commitment. I barely heard any of it. All I could feel was that unnerving stare, like a weight on my chest. The vows came. Clarissa went first. She spoke clearly, confidently, like someone who had rehearsed both the words and the facial expressions in a mirror. Then it was Marcus's turn. "I'm Marcus," he began. He glanced at her, then at the crowd, and then his eyes snagged on mine again, like they couldn't help themselves. I, he stuttered. The whole room leaned forward. A low murmur rippled through the guests. Clarissa's perfect smile trembled, then hardened. Through gritted teeth, just barely off mic, I saw her hiss. "Marcus, what is wrong with you?" Everyone assumed it was nerves, stage fright, the weight of the moment. But sitting there feeling that electric line between his stare and my face, I knew it was something else. Recognition. He took a deep, shuddering breath, like a man coming up for air after staying under too long. His eyes sharpened, focused, and in that moment, I knew. The carefully built walls around my secret life, the quiet little existence I'd carved out for myself, they were about to crumble. The silence in that ballroom got thick enough to taste. Then, slowly, deliberately, Marcus did the last thing anyone expected. He let go of Clarissa's hand. He turned to her, and although his back was to most of the guests, the mic on his lapel caught every single word. "I'm sorry, Clarissa," he said, voice quiet but steady. "I have to do this." He didn't wait for her reply. He stepped down from the altar and began to walk down the aisle. Not toward the door, not toward a nervous groomsman. Toward me. Kalen shot up from his seat, putting himself between us. "Marcus, what are you doing?" he demanded, voice low and dangerous. Marcus kept coming. He didn't seem to see anything or anyone but me. His eyes locked on mine with this wild, grateful, almost reverent expression I did not know how to receive in that moment. He stopped a few feet away, breathing hard, not from the distance, but from whatever was happening inside him. "It's you," he whispered. "It has to be you, Vance." I never made the connection. From the altar, Clarissa's voice sliced through the air, too shrill to be ignored. "Marcus, what is this insane little drama you're playing at? That's just Kalen's girlfriend." He didn't even turn his head. He looked at me and bowed. Not dramatically. Just enough. Enough that everyone could see it. Enough that every person in that room who had looked down on me, laughed at my dress, questioned why I was there, suddenly had to reconsider everything. "Ma'am," he said, one syllable. and it detonated. You could feel the shock ripple outward from that spot. People whipped their heads around. A wave of whispers hit the back wall and rolled forward. Did he just call her ma'am? Wait. Did he say Vance? Vance Capital. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. Marcus straightened, swallowing hard, and raised his voice just enough that everyone could hear. But it still felt like he was talking only to me. "You're V," he said, "the head of Vance Capital, the only investor who answered me when my company was 2 weeks from shutting down. I sent hundreds of pitches, hundreds of emails. Everyone ignored me, except you. You wired the money, you saved my company, you changed my life. The only reason I can stand here today in this suit, in this hotel, at this wedding, is because of you." Every head in that ballroom turned, some toward me, some toward Eleonora, some toward Clarissa, still frozen at the altar. In about 30 seconds, the narrative flipped completely. I wasn't just the girl in the plain black dress anymore. I was the ghost some of them had heard about in business sections, the one behind that mythical fund, the one whose decisions had quietly made and broken fortunes. The hidden hand was suddenly very, very visible. And you know what was almost funny? All the people who 10 minutes before had decided I wasn't worth their time now couldn't look away. Up front, Eleonora Sterling, queen of the room, was standing now, one hand on the back of her chair, face pale. Clarissa looked like a doll someone had dropped. Her expression was frozen and cracked at the same time. Beside me, I felt Kalen sink slowly back into his seat. His eyes were on me, but this time the look there wasn't shock at who I was. It was shock at how much of me he had never seen. The murmuring got louder. Vance Capital bounced around the room like a stone in a glass house. Then Eleonora moved. Years of social training kicked in. Her face smoothed. Her mouth curved into something warm and maternal. She glided down the aisle like the queen she believed herself to be, heading straight for me. "Zola, my dear child," she said when she reached me, her voice sugared and smooth. She reached out as if to touch my arm. "Why on earth didn't you tell us who you were? This is all just a terrible, terrible misunderstanding." There it was. That word again. Misunderstanding. The magic eraser. Rich people like to whip out when their behavior is dragged into the light. I didn't step back. I didn't smile. I simply met her eyes. "There was no misunderstanding, Mrs. Sterling," I said, my voice calm but carrying. "The way you and your daughter treated me before you knew my name, that was not a misunderstanding. That was you. The only thing that has changed now is that you realized you were rude to the wrong person." The hush that fell over the crowd was almost painful. Her hand dropped. For the first time since I'd met her, she had no words ready. The armor she was used to putting on didn't quite fit anymore. Behind her on the altar, Clarissa finally snapped. She turned on Marcus' veil, trembling makeup cracking at the edges. "So what was this?" she screamed, voice shaking. "You humiliate me. You destroy our wedding in front of everyone we know for her." Marcus looked at her, and something in his expression sound shifted. Whatever softness had been there earlier was gone. "Did I humiliate you, Clarissa?" he said quietly. "Or did your own behavior humiliate you? The way you treated the one person who gave me a future. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think that kind of ugliness could stay hidden forever?" I felt something in my chest loosen. But I also felt something else, a deep, bone-tired sense that I was done with this entire scene. Whatever drama played out between them from that point on, that wasn't my story. I'd already been dragged into the center of a spotlight I never asked for. I turned to Kalen. Our eyes met, and for a second everything else blurred. "Let's go," I said softly. He didn't look back at his mother. He didn't look at his sister crying on the altar. He didn't glance at his guests or at Marcus or at the cluster of people already pulling out their phones. He just nodded, stood up, took my hand, and walked out with me. We stepped back into the night air. It felt cooler than before. Cleaner. The noise of the ballroom faded behind us, muffled by thick walls and heavy doors. We got in the car and drove. The city slid by outside the windows, lights streaking across the glass. Inside, it was quiet. Not the sharp, brittle kind of silence you get after a fight. A softer kind. The kind you get when a storm has finally broken and moved on, and all that's left is the sound of things settling back into place. After a while, Kalen spoke. "I'm sorry," he said. Voice low and rough. I turned to look at him. "And I don't mean I'm sorry you didn't tell me who you were," he went on. "I don't have a right to that. I'm sorry I failed you. I was naive. I thought I understood my family's prejudice just because I rolled my eyes at it. I called it shallow. I treated it like just a bad habit. I didn't see it for what it was to you. A weapon. I walked you right into their line of fire and told myself I was protecting you. That's what I'm really sorry for." The truth of that hit deep, deeper than I expected. For years, I'd kept my story in pieces. Gave people slices, never the whole thing. But something about that night that revealed that messy, humiliating freeing scene in the ballroom, it knocked something loose. "It was never about hiding Kalen," I said quietly, watching the city lights flicker against the windshield. "It was about searching." He glanced over, waiting. "After my parents died, and I took over the fund, the world changed," I said. "Or maybe it just showed me what it had always been. People stopped seeing me. They saw a name on a building, a line on a cap table, a stack of money with legs. Every relationship, every friendship, it all turned into this calculation in my head. Do you want me, or do you want what I can give you?" I remembered late nights staring at ceilings in hotel rooms, realizing that the man lying next to me knew my net worth down to the last decimal, but couldn't tell you my favorite book. I got tired, I admitted. Tired of wondering. Tired of testing people and failing them or failing myself. I wanted a place where I could just be Zola. Not Vance Capital. Not ma'am. Just Zola. The woman with the gray sweater and the chipped mug at the coffee shop. I smiled a little. Then I found that coffee shop. And I found you. And for the first time in a long time, nobody in that room cared what my last name was. And you were just some overdressed guy who kept stealing my favorite chair. He laughed softly. "Guilty. I didn't tell you who I was," I continued. "Because that secret was the only proof I had that whatever we were building was real. If you didn't know about the money, if you didn't know about the fund, and you still showed up for the quiet, boring parts of my life, then it meant you were there for me." He was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "That makes sense," he said, "more than I want to admit. And for the record, I fell in love with the woman in the gray sweater. The fact that you can buy out half the wedding guests we just walked away from before breakfast, that's just a bonus." I rolled my eyes, but there was warmth in it. "Just a bonus, huh?" He pulled the car over to the side of a quiet street, the engine idling softly. Then he picked up his phone, scrolled to a number and hit call. He put it on speaker. It rang twice. "Kalen!" His mother's voice came through sharp and panicked, the smooth socialite tone barely holding. "Mother," he said. His voice was calm. Too calm. "I'm going to say this once. If you and Clarissa cannot find it within yourselves to offer Zola a sincere, genuine public apology for your behavior, then you need to understand you will no longer be part of my life. There will be no negotiation on this. That is the choice." There was a gasp on the other end, a rush of words. "Kalen, you can't mean, after everything we've done, that girl." He hung up, just like that. He looked at me, eyes steady. No drama, no grand speech. Just a line drawn. Then he put the car back in gear and started driving again. He didn't head toward his apartment or mine. He drove back to the coffee shop. The sign above the door glowed softly in the dark, casting that familiar warm light on the sidewalk. Inside, the tables were half full. The barista behind the counter looked up and smiled in recognition. The bell over the door chimed when we walked in. It smelled like roasted beans and nostalgia. We ordered our usual, sat back down in our usual mismatched armchairs. Same chairs, same table, same view of the window. Except now there were no secrets sitting between us with the sugar packets. Everything was out. The fund, the family, the humiliation, the choices. I leaned back and exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. Sometimes the real happy ending isn't revenge or public applause. Sometimes it's just getting your quiet back. So here's the thing I want to leave you with. That wedding didn't actually change who anyone was. Not really. It just revealed it. Eleonora and Clarissa didn't become cruel when they thought I was poor, and suddenly kind when they realized I was rich. They were always exactly who they showed me. They were the moment I walked in. Marcus didn't become grateful because I was powerful. He already was, long before he knew my face. Colleen didn't become loyal in that car. He just finally understood what loyalty was going to cost him. A person's worth isn't written in the label on their dress, in the color of their skin, in the size of their bank account, or the surnames in their family tree. It's written in how they treat people they think they don't need. The waitress, the janitor, the quiet girl in the simple black dress sitting in the back row. So let me ask you, if you had been in that ballroom and you had laughed at me when you thought I was nobody, how would you have reacted when you found out who I was? Would you have run up with apologies, tried to rewrite history and call it a misunderstanding? Or doubled down and said, I should have told you? Do you think it was fair for Callan to draw that hard line with his family to say, apologize or you're out? Was that too extreme, or was it the bare minimum? And more personally, have you ever been on the receiving end of this kind of treatment? Judged for your clothes, your job, your car, your skin, your accent, only to watch people's attitudes flip when they realize you don't fit their stereotype. Or maybe you've watched someone else get treated that way and stayed quiet, thinking it wasn't your place to say anything. If it were you, what would you have done? I really want to hear your thoughts on this. Drop a comment and tell me if you think they got what they deserved, if you would have handled it differently, or if you've lived through something similar. Call me out if you think I'm being too harsh. Agree with me if you've seen this play out 100 times. If this story made you feel something, anger, satisfaction, discomfort, hope, hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that the person you're laughing at today might be the person signing your paycheck tomorrow. And the next time you find yourself in a room full of people deciding who matters based on outfits and last names, remember that the real test of who you are isn't how you treat the powerful, it's how you treat the people you think are powerless. Because sooner or later, life has a way of saying, yes, ma'am, to the ones you never saw coming.